Welcome once again to the Autosportradio.com 2020 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are, as always, the last few weeks at the Grant King Race Shops here at 8155 Crawfordsville Road in beautiful town of Indianapolis. And whenever this lockdown ever gets done, you got to come by here. It's a working museum. You got great cars. And behind me, which I'm blocking now, is a Olsenite Eagle driven by Bobby Unser they have for sale. They have a number of cars in here, which we will highlight from time to time. But today's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, SVRA, and VP Insurance. And I also want to mention our host, McGilvery's, where we haven't been for 5 weeks, is remodeling. And when they open up, you're going to be really surprised. So keep that in mind. They will start back with carryout. And when they do, I'll be sure and let you know. Founded in 1993 to spearhead Honda's entry into IndyCar racing, Honda Performance Development has overseen successful racing efforts at all levels of the sport, from karting and quarter midgets to IndyCar and prototype sports cars. HPD offers race engines and competition products for professional, amateur, and entry-level racers. For more information about HPD and the company's racing product lines, please visit hpd.honda.com. And if you are like me and have computer problems, we have a new guy. He is A+ affordable computer doctor. He is a doctor. He makes house calls. His name is Steve Freed. You can give him a call, tell him something or with your problem. You'll see what he can do to help you out. Number is 317-328-0766. And if you have dental problems, and everybody wants to go to the dentist, the best place to go and the only place to go is the Indy Dental Group. Indy 500 veteran Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have phenomenal practice, one of the highest rated in the state. Give them a call for an appointment. Number is 317-846-6125. And if you'd ever like to find out what it's like to be in an Indy car, take the two-seater ride from Indy Racing Experience. You can go to indyracingexperience.com, find out a date that will work for you, and in the promo box, put DK1, you get a 50% discount. Or you can call Shonda at the office. The number is 317-243-7171. Is it time yet for insurance for your home, your car, your commercial property? Then do what I have done and many people have done. Go to VP Insurance, located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. Talk to Mike Pardee. He will help you. I guarantee you. Number is 317-248-0070. Talk to him. See what he can do for you. You'll be surprised. Are you a vintage car fan, a Trans Am fan? Then you need to go and subscribe to the Speed Tour magazine. Let's go to www.svra.com and sign up. It's a great magazine, first class, great pictures, great stories, and some of the drivers and cars you knew as a kid, they're out running again, and so are the drivers, are driving them. So check it out. Have you an interest in a vintage car, or you have one and need it restored or an engine rebuilt? The Grant King shops are the place to go. Give them a call, tell them what you got or what you're looking for. It could be the car behind me, the Olsenite Eagle driven by Bobby Unser, or you have one, give them a call. The number is 317-820-3595. Now, my guest is a young lady that I've been anxious to get a hold of, but like Lisa, they don't come to Indianapolis on Tuesdays for me. So since we have this situation, it's made it very easy, and I've been able to get a hold of people that are partners in the series, find out what they do. My guest today is the newly appointed and promoted Director of Race Tire Engineering and Production for Bridgestone Americas Tire Operations and Firestone Racing. Please welcome Cara Adams. Cara, thanks for joining us today. And I have a number of questions for you in particular, obviously, since you're here. And the first one is, what's it like being a lady in charge of racing tires?
Well, Don, it's always wonderful to talk to you. We always enjoy catching up to you at Long Beach or whatever track that we might be at. But now that we're here at home and a lot of us are working from home at this point, it's just really good to be able to talk racing. We just are so passionate about racing at Firestone Racing and Bridgestone Americas. So we just love racing and we're very passionate about it. And as to your first question, what's it like being a lady in this sport? To quote my good friend Catherine Legg, I don't really know what it's like to be a man in this sport. So everybody treats you the same. I think it's all about results. So if people respect results in racing, it's just a great equal playing ground for everybody.
Well, for a long time, you'd see females come out when a car would come in from practice, and they would come out and measure the temperatures in the tire. And you know, it's, as I mentioned to Lisa, it's always impressed me that of the many series that run, not all with Firestone, obviously, but they have tire problems. With the speed and the downforce and so forth on an IndyCar, Firestone very seldom, if ever, has a problem. Why?
So thanks for that question. We have a really, really great both engineering staff and production staff. So our engineering staff does all kinds of testing before you even see a tire hit the racetrack. It's gone through very grueling tests, even worse than what it would see on a racetrack. And we're testing at speeds up to 300 miles per hour to make sure the tires are appropriate for the racetracks we go to. So our engineering staff is pretty lean. We have about 4 mechanical engineers, a couple of chemical engineers, and a lot of technicians behind us. But we also have the greater good of the entire Bridgestone Americas Technical Center. So if we run into a question or we run into a difficulty with the tire design, we have lots of engineers across the organization that are willing to help us. So there's a lot of testing, a lot of design, and just really a lot of passion that goes into this. If you talk to any one of my engineers, they all understand why it's so important to have such a safe, durable race tire.
How do you test other than on a car? Do you have a platform where you put the tire on and you can exert pressure and do corners and so forth, replicating the surfaces that you will run on the various racetracks around the country?
Yeah, there's a lot of different test procedures that we do. So part of it is understanding what the surfaces that we're going to race on. So there's a lot of things that we do to understand the track surfaces. We do track scanning. We measure the grip surface of the tracks. Then we also do things like high-speed durability testing and testing on cornering to understand the cornering characteristics of the tire. So anything from, think of it's like a treadmill for a race tire. So it's a machine that we set up on between 2 drums, and it's a flat belt that can replicate all the cornering. And then our durability testing we do on several different types of equipment. But just think of a tire against a big drum that's rotating at a very high rate of speed with a lot of cornering force and input that goes into it.
When you do testing, do you try and get different driving styles from drivers to test your tires? You don't take the same people every time, because after doing it 2 or 3 times, you pretty well know what they do. But you try and get some of the new drivers, if they've got a different driving style, to see how it fits with the tires you produce?
There's a lot of different things that we can do pulling from race data. So if I look at, let's just say I'm looking at the Indianapolis 500 data, what I can do is I can ask Penske for a tire data set. I can ask Ganassi, I can ask Coyne and Foyt for all of the same things. And I get basically an electronic data set that describes all of the conditions that the tires go through. So I can look at loads and cambers and speeds, and my engineers can do some pretty complicated math to understand what the forces that the tires are going through. And it's often, we will go and look at the tires after a big super speedway or a race that puts a lot of force into the tires. And you can see the different driving styles and the effects that those have on our race tires after the fact. So you have somebody who has a really smooth driving style. Let's take Will Power, for example. He uses much less of the tire than somebody like, I'm going to pick on him because he's not in the series right now, but Juan Pablo Montoya is always somebody who's been really, really hard on the tires. So we look at that, and so we can understand what other people's driving styles are. And then when we go to a racetrack, let's pick Indianapolis for example, since we're still talking about that. Indy, we have a track where we want to have somebody who is going to put the most work possible into the tires. And then we want to have somebody that might be maybe more near mid-pack.
If they were to, fortunately, increase the starting field from, say, 24 up to 26, 28, would that be a problem for Firestone, or can you produce the tires for extra cars, no problem?
So one of the things that we do, and there are people at IndyCar that are phenomenal about this, is they are pretty good at giving us ranges of tires. So if we know in enough time where we can produce as many tires as we need to, I think we're not limited by production. But if you were to tell me a week before a race that we're having 5 extra cars, that would be really hard to adapt to. So we're always working with IndyCar to think, all right, how many maximum could we possibly have? And the team owners are really good about letting us know a couple months in advance of the races on what races that they might actually be running in.
The tires that you guys use when the car changes, when they put that windscreen on now, that will affect the handling of the car. Do you have to adjust your tires accordingly? Do you have to build a new tire to handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the racetrack, but the new aero screen is putting a lot of load into the front tires. If you remember hearing about the aeroscreen, it's actually shifted the weight almost 1% forward in its center of mass, and it's up about 13 to 15 millimeters higher. The higher center of mass that actually causes more roll, which causes more weight transfer. So you have more load to the outside tires. So whether it's in a road course or it's in an oval, for example, an oval, you're transferring all that load onto the right side, and because it's more further forward, you're transferring a lot of load into the right front tire. So now the right front tire becomes key in the setup where it wasn't necessarily that way before. So there are certain races that we're actually changing constructions in order to adapt to the new aeroscreen.
When you build a tire and it withstands 500, for instance, or they can go on a difficult road course, street course, can you use any of the information from these tires to transfer to regular passenger vehicles?
So there's a lot of different ways that we can transfer our technology over to street tires. We don't necessarily take what we learn at 240 miles per hour and apply it to tires that are going on a Honda Civic. But at the same time, we learn a lot from the technology that we use. So in order to make a tire go 240 miles per hour, we need to learn how to be able to maintain and mitigate heat. So heat is the enemy of a race tire, but that's also the case on several other types of tires too. So we can learn from that. And there are also processes that we put in place, how we go about making the tires and how we go about looking and understanding the systems that we need to be able to build the tire and looking at logistics and everything all the way through. There are lots of times that we will take a project and we'll pilot it in a race. And if it's successful in race, then we'll apply it to the rest of the company.
This virtual racing is going on now, the iRacing series, which will be this weekend at COTA. And they talk about, time to go in and change tires. You think this is a virtual race. What's that got to do with anything? And driving style has had an effect on that as a virtual race. That's kind of interesting. Do you guys have anything to do, oversee any of that, or is this with the engineer and the driver, they figure it out?
I think it's really interesting what the iRacing developers have done to come up with a tire that actually kind of mimics what a Firestone race tire might do. So we are able to, the iRacing drivers are able to warm up their tires properly. If you warm it up too much, then you're putting too much work into the tires. If you don't warm it up enough, it doesn't come up to temperature. So it always makes me laugh to hear the drivers say, I got to get the tires up to temperature. So what they have is they have really impressive models that can go in and understand what the work that has gone into the tires. It's a lot of like what we do, analyzing what's gone into a tire after the race, looking at that virtual or digital data. And they're able to come up with a pretty realistic way to have tires drop off over a race stint. And it's very impressive what they've done. A lot of times it'll mimic what we've seen, even looking at the Motegi race and trying to make sure that they have mimicked what has actually happened in reality or in the past.
As I sit here listening to you and your knowledge and how you speak about a tire, I've got to wonder, as a young lady when you were in college, what school did you go to? What did you study? What did you graduate with a degree in?
Okay, so I love talking about my school. I went to the University of Akron. When I started, I was looking at a physics major, but I wandered down into the machine shop one day, the one that designs and builds Formula SAE cars. So if your listeners or viewers are not familiar with a Formula SAE car, just think an Indy car, but much smaller. We're talking a 600cc motorcycle engine as opposed to the 2.2 liter Indy car engines. So a very small motorcycle engine. That's the first engine I actually ever learned to build on my own. I learned to do things like use a mill, use a lathe, weld, things that really practical skills that I'm really glad that I learned there. But that's where I got my first bug in racing. So at that point I got to ride and drive the car at one point, and I thought, oh, this is great if I can find a career in racing. So I studied mechanical engineering. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I also have a degree in Spanish because it was nice to be able to take some classes that were not quite as grueling or hard as the mechanical engineering classes are. Not that they weren't hard or difficult, but they were just difficult in a different way.
So you can speak Spanish. Too bad you didn't learn how to speak Japanese. You'd be right at home at Bridgestone.
Well, I actually credit my dad. My dad is a linguist. He speaks probably, if you were to ask him, he would say he only speaks a handful fluently, but he speaks, in my opinion of the word fluent, probably about 20 languages, and he's just always been good at linguistics and language. So I've picked up some basic Japanese, some basic Portuguese. If we go to, when we were looking at going for an IndyCar race in China, I was trying to learn a little bit of Mandarin. So I love languages. It's always been something, I think languages and math kind of go together. They're structured, and it's just a bit of it is memorization, but once you learn the rules, it's pretty easy to apply.
Well, I was a proud member of Uncle Sam's Canoe Club, also known as the United States Navy, and I spent 6 years in Japan.
Oh,
And strangely enough, I learned the language. I picked it up rather quickly. Then I went to school and I had no clue what they were talking about. But I could talk. I could communicate with people, and they looked at me rather strangely and thought, ooh, Kyotsukete, he understands us. Be careful. So, that's kind of neat. But again, you're the director of tire engineering. Did anything you studied lead you to, so you walked in and you said, well, I see what you're doing. I understand that.
Well, I think with tires, a lot of what you learn is on the job training. So you don't walk out of school understanding much more than the tires are round, black, made of rubber. There's some structure in there. You put them together in layers, and that's about maybe all you learn in school. But at the same time, engineering school teaches you how to think and how to solve problems. So in engineering school, you might have to look at a problem of, there are 17 students in the classroom and your heating unit is a certain size. What do you need in order to make the most efficient choice? So when you go to look at a race tire, you're doing the same problem solving. So a lot of the information that you learn helps you solve problems. A lot of the math that you learn helps you develop computer programs and look at unique ways for solutions. But a lot of it is a bit of learning on the job and a bit intuitive. Let me tell you, the Spanish has come in handy. We talked about languages. When we were testing the DW12, and it was Oriol Servia and Juan Pablo Montoya, they would debrief with me. And at the time, I don't think either realized I spoke Spanish. They would debrief with me, and then they would walk off. The two of them would talk, and I'd kind of stand around while the two of them were talking and think, that they didn't tell me that. Like, when they debriefed with me, they didn't give me that piece of feedback or information about the tires. So a lot of times what you learn does help you out in school or help you out in the job, but a lot of times you have to learn on your own.
Well, that's interesting. If you decide, or Firestone decides that, we need to change a tire a little bit, do you change the compound that's used? And where do you find new types of rubber, new chemicals that work? Where does that come from?
So we have the benefit of having a lot of history of running an IndyCar and running an open wheel series. So we have a lot of basically a great library of what works in a race tire and what doesn't work in a race tire. We're always looking for new compounds and new material, but a lot of times it's just adjusting the formulations a little bit. I've had the pleasure of learning from some really great smart compounders and also some really great smart engineers. If you think about Dale Harrigal and Paige Mader and a lot of the others that I've learned from, same thing on the chemical engineering side. There's a lot of people that have contributed quite a bit to race tire technology. Brett Schilling is our lead compounder now, and Jack Rogers does an amazing job on the road and street courses. But you can go back to Dwayne Joyner and many before him that have actually helped us develop these compounds and understand what we need. We're always looking for new materials that we can use, but we have a pretty great library.
If you look for new material, where do you look? You go to Google and look it up, or you go to Brazil and start poking around rubber trees? Where do you find it?
Well, our travel budget doesn't allow us to go to Brazil. Rubber trees. But if you look at a lot of our suppliers, there's a lot that are continuously developing new products and new methods. And it's interesting, we can learn anything from, we've had a group that was introduced to us from your friends at Indy Racing Experience, that they're looking at developing a new way of coming up with something like a carbon black. And then some of our partners that we've even worked through with James Hinchcliffe's partner at Holly Frontier, looking at some of their oils. So there's a lot of people that will come to you with some ideas for things to use. And sometimes if we know about something specific, we can go to, let's say, our Bridgestone research area, and we can say, hey, we're looking for a polymer that does this. Do you have something that you can either give us off the shelf or something that you can develop that comes up with this?
Now, during the shutdown, of course, you're still manufacturing tires because they're still building some cars and people are buying them. I go by several Firestone stores around here, and I see people in there, and I see cars on the lift with new tires being put on. I understand, if I'm not mistaken, that you're expanding. The Firestone is expanding. They're building a new building now. And what's, where is it and what's it to be used for?
Yeah, Don, we're very excited about this. So we were looking for a more efficient way to manufacture our race tires. We have been in our Firestone headquarters, we call it Plant One, for over 100 years,
Oh,
but it's not really efficient anymore. And we're looking for a new place to go, a new place to manufacture tires. So we actually came up with a plan to keep tire manufacturing in Akron, but actually build a new facility. It's part existing facility and part new facility. And it's actually in Akron. It's even closer to our Bridgestone Americas Technical Center now. It's just basically right across the street. That's us. There's the Firestone Stadium, and then there's our new plant. And even right now, we're still under construction. We're excited about it. We were hoping to get tires tested on track this year, but with the current situation, it's going to be maybe a little bit difficult to hit that goal. But we'll have tires tested on track next year, and they'll be out definitely for the 2020 season.
How involved is Bridgestone? Are they, obviously they got to be 1,000% behind this, because it would seem to me that when you can say that Firestone, 1 to 500 and use the exact number of tires, they didn't have any problem. That's got to be good for the retail end of things, I would think.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do in racing drives people to buy our consumer tires. So if you look at the win on Sunday, sell on Monday, Harvey Firestone himself really believed that, and that's one of the things that we do, and it's really important for us to do our job really well in racing and make sure their brand looks great on the racetrack, so the people want to put those tires on their car.
When you go to the racetrack, how many people do you have? Now, I know you have a big transporter with tire changing equipment in there, but how many people do you bring to each event?
On a typical race weekend, I'm not talking Indianapolis, but on a typical race weekend, we might have about 35 people. We have about 5 or 6 engineering staff. We have a couple people from communications, obviously Lisa Boggs, the director of motorsports, and other people that work for her. And then we have a lot of tire technicians. Performance Tire Service Company out of Indianapolis, Indiana, does a fantastic job. Steve and Barbara Butts are amazing, and their people are amazing. They help us on pit lane. They help us mount and balance tires. So we're very, very much part of the traveling circus that is IndyCar.
Yeah, I know several of the people, a number of them have changed, but I know Roderick and Dana's been around for quite a while, and I know them. Good people, always fun, and always cooperative. If I have some silly question, they'll answer it or point me where I should go to get away from them.
They put up with my silly questions too, so they're great.
I just think it's interesting that you have been, of all the people that are involved in Firestone Racing, that your determination, your nose to the grindstone has gotten you to where now you oversee the whole racing operation. That's very impressive.
Thank you. I've had a lot of people help me on the way. And then I think we've chatted before about how I got here. I just started out with a Paige Mater, and I told him that I really wanted to work for his racing organization. And I started basically, what do I need to do in order to be able to do this? So he gave me some things that I could do, read some textbooks, understand a bit, and I went out and I bought textbooks and I studied on my own time until they had an opening for a mechanical engineer, and I wanted to give them no choice but to hire me. But there's a lot of people that have helped me get to where I'm at. Like I talked about Dale and Paige before. They've been tremendous, and it's really a great team. And it's something that I've always, from hearing about what Firestone does in IndyCar and their tradition all the way back to 1911 in the first race, it's always something that I've wanted to do.
How many of your plants are working full speed ahead? Have they got a lot of people that are on furlough now, or are they still going pretty well full blast?
Well, for us, the safety of our teammates is number one. So that's one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we comply with all of the government regulations that are out there. But we also realize that Firestone and Bridgestone are essential business, and we need to make sure that we keep the infrastructure of America running. People need to make sure that those medical supplies get delivered, and we're doing some great things there. And a lot of our teammates right now are working from home. And even some of those teammates that are working from home are working on things like 3D printing face shields. We've done some great work in the Akron Technical Center, and we've made masks to be delivered to places like Suma Health System, and then some of our other area organizations. So there's some 3D printing going on while people are at home. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing behind the scenes. So it's really, it makes you be proud to be part of the company.
Now, I think this is probably a silly question, but are you anxious for the season to start?
Oh my goodness, Dawn, I would love to, I mean, I love my little home office here. It's great, but yes, I would definitely like to be racing.
Do
But
you-
again, we need to make sure we do it in a very safe manner when everybody is safe and the virus is contained. But yes, I'm very much itching to be at the racetrack.
so you like the travel, the weekly travel or bi-weekly?
Yes, I do. I think the IndyCar schedule is great. You know, with normally about 17 race weekends, this time hopefully about 15. And I do like being able to get out. You get to see some amazing things and get to meet some amazing people. You've been in the IndyCar paddock long enough to know there's some just great people there in the paddock, and all our drivers are second to none. So it's good.
That's always impressed me over the years. I started at my first Indianapolis 500 was you weren't even thought of yet in 1963, I think it was. And strangely enough, I got tired of hanging on a fence. I figured out a way to get into the pit area, and it worked like a charm. Then I started meeting people. And the thing that's always impressed me about IndyCar in particular is the drivers are accessible.
Yes, they are.
They'll talk to you, they'll sign, they'll pose pictures. If they're putting their hat on, it's not a good time to talk to them. But other than that, they will stop and talk to you. And I think that's great.
Yeah, it's great, especially if you look at Indianapolis. They're walking outside of their pit boxes, and they walk up to the stands and the little fence that's behind there, and they're always signing autographs, and they take the time to talk to people, and it's a really good crowd.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. It's been very interesting, and I've enjoyed talking to both you and Lisa. And maybe sometime, since we're going to be tied up for a little while longer, I'm not sure that the first race is going to get off on schedule, but you never know. I hope it does, of course. But I thank you for your time, and be careful. Now I know how to get a hold of you.
Yes.
Hear from me again.
Well, it was absolutely great to talk to you again, Don. Thanks to all of your listeners. And hopefully next time we talk, it'll be in person.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, take care.
My guest has been Cara Adams. She is the director of tire engineering for Bridgestone Firestone, actually. Great organization, great company, great things they do, and we enjoyed time with her. Thanks, Cara. See you again. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back again, and it won't be that long from now. We'll have another program. We've got a couple of interviews lined up, so we will be taking care of that, and they'll be coming up on the internet, and we'll let you know when. Until next time, Don Kay saying goodbye.